Good afternoon, everyone. It's just about 4:30, so we might as well get started. Welcome back to all of our regulars, and hello to any new people that we have joining the call today. I hope you all had a fantastic Christmas and New Year. My New Year wasn't too great, and this is kind of forms part of an apology I have to make to you first of all for moving this webinar. It was supposed to be on Wednesday, but unfortunately I was a little bit sick on Wednesday, something I picked up over the New Year period, I think. So thank you guys for being so flexible and for moving to today. I know training on a Friday is not always the best. We're looking forward to the weekend, but hopefully you'll still enjoy this webinar. And it's not a particularly long webinar today. We're not going to be cramming too much in. We're just really going to be focusing in on what-if analysis tools in Excel. Now, I always like to, I know we always have a lot of our regulars on, but I always like to introduce myself very briefly, first of all, for any new people that we do have, so you have an idea of who you're talking to. So my name's Deborah Ashby, and I am an IT trainer and subject matter expert for Microsoft products. And I've been working in the IT industry for a very long time now, so about 24 years. I've just had a birthday, just turned 40. It's not good. And I've been an IT trainer for about 10 years. So mainly focused on Microsoft products, but there are other things that I train occasionally as well. So hopefully that means that I'm qualified enough to be running this little session for you here today. So let's jump straight into it without further ado. Let's look at our agenda. And as I said, we're not going to be cramming loads and loads in, just focusing in on those what-if analysis utilities. So I think it's best to start out just by talking a little bit about what exactly is what-if analysis. It might be a term that you've heard of. It might be the first time that you're hearing it. But there are a few little things which are part of the what-if analysis group of tools, which you might find quite useful. And we're going to go through some demos and some practical examples so you can see them in action. But remember, as we go through, you know, my examples are ones that I've kind of made up. They're kind of contrived. So you have to kind of think about how you can apply these to the kind of work that you do. So just keep that in the back of your mind as we're going through and think about how these tools might be useful to you in your daily work. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is actually not a what-if analysis tool. I'm going to show you very briefly the PMT function, which is generally used to calculate a payment. So we're going to look at sort of paying back a loan and how you would use the PMT function. Now, it's not a what-if analysis tool, but I thought I might as well throw it in there because the examples that we are going to be using to run through what-if analysis kind of contain the PMT function. So I thought it'd be a good opportunity to just show you that function as well. It never hurts to learn a few more functions. That's what I think. So we'll quickly run through that so you can see how it works. And then we'll jump into those what-if analysis utilities. So I'm going to show you how you can change the outcome using goal seek, how you can explore different outcomes using scenarios, how you can create data tables, and how you can make your data readable using conditional formatting. It's just a little thing I've added on at the end. And then we'll have some time for Q&A. So I don't expect us to run over the hour at all for this session. As I said, there's not loads and loads of things we have to go through. But we are going to do a few really nice little examples. Now, if you have no idea what-if analysis is, don't worry, it'll all become clear as we go through. So I will give you a very brief explanation, and this is really the definition from Microsoft. So it says, what-if analysis is the process of changing the values in cells to see how those changes will affect the outcome of formulas on the worksheets. And there are three kinds of what-if analysis tools that come with Excel: scenarios, goal seek, and data tables. And those are the three things that we're going to look at today, along with the PMT function. Just a little random thing I've decided to throw in. So don't worry if that definition doesn't make too much sense to you at the moment. It should all become clear when we start running through these examples. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to look at goal seek, but we're going to look at the PMT function first of all. Now, I've got two examples on this spreadsheet. The first example here is this one. So this is the loan payment using PMT. And then we have a second example down here, which is this test scores table. So we're going to deal with these separately. So the first thing I want to do is just show you how you use that PMT function in order to calculate a payment. So in this little scenario, we're going to pretend that we are maybe applying for a loan, or we need a loan in order to buy a car. Okay, so I can see here that the amount that I want to borrow is £24,000 or dollars, whatever you prefer. I can see that I want to borrow it over a period of 60 months, so 5 years essentially. And the interest rate on that loan is 3.5%. And what I want to do is work out what that payment, that monthly payment, is going to be if all of those conditions are true. Okay, so that's what we use the PMT function for. So there are a few different ways that you can pull up that PMT function. So you can either start typing it directly into a cell like so, which some people like to do. That's my preferred method, but other people like to use the dialog box. So you could, if you wanted to, go to the formulas ribbon. And if it's a formula that you've used before, you'll probably find it under your recently used. And you can see when I was playing around with this earlier, PMT is the top one in my list. But I also know that it's available in the financial functions section as well. So these are all in alphabetical order. And if I scroll down, you'll find that there is the PMT function. Another way you could access that function, particularly if you're not really sure what the function name is, sometimes we kind of know what we want to do, but we don't really know which function to use in order to do that task. So the thing I like to use if I'm in that scenario is the function library. So I click on this little FX button next to the formula bar, which when you hover over it says insert function. And this takes me to my insert function dialog box. And this is where you can search for any function that's available in Excel. So if you know the exact name, you can type it into the search, but I don't in this instance. So I might just type in something like a description. So I might say, okay, I want to do a loan payment. And if I click on go, there you go. The top one there is PMT. And I can have a little look at the description underneath just to confirm if that is the function that I want to use. Okay, so a few different ways that you can kind of invoke the PMT function. Now, I'm not going to use this dialog box to do it. I'm going to do that in another example. I'm going to cancel out there, and I'm just going to type it directly into here. So I'm going to type equals PMT, and I'm going to open my bracket. Now, when you're using this function, if you see underneath, it's highlighted in bold what the first argument is. And in this case, it's rate. So I can look in my little table and I can see that my rate is located here in cell B3. Now, something that's really important, I want to highlight this to you, is to be careful with this, because what we're working out here is a monthly payment, okay? The rate is per annum, so the rate is yearly. Okay, so what we need to do, if that rate is yearly, we need to divide it by 12 to make it monthly, because we're looking for a monthly payment. Okay, so I'm going to say the rate divided by 12, and that will give me that monthly interest rate, comma, and then it's asking me for NPER. That means number of periods. So that is the term essentially, okay? And here I've got it split down into months. So notice that I've got 60 months as opposed to 5 years. And again, I try to keep everything sort of on a monthly basis because we are working out the payment per month. So that's why I've got 60 there instead of 5. All right, so I'm going to select B4, comma. And now it's asking me for PV. You can see that underneath here. That's present value, which basically just means the loan amount. So I'm going to select my loan amount, B5, in there. The other two arguments on the end are optional. You can tell which arguments are optional because they're in square brackets. And I don't need those in this case. This is all I really need. I can close my bracket and I can hit the Enter key. And that will give me my monthly payment. So each month I'm going to be paying £437 or dollars, whatever your currency is, for a £24,000 loan. Now, the reason why it's got a minus there is because the way that Excel looks at this, it sees it as a deduction essentially. It's coming out of your account, which is why it's saying minus 437. If for some reason, and there might be cases where you might not want to display it as a minus, you just want it as a whole number. If that's the case, you can go back into the formula by double clicking. And if you just add a minus onto the end there, so just before the loan amount in cell B5, because two minuses make a positive, it will give you that as a whole number as opposed to a negative value. Okay, now this isn't part of what if analysis at all, but we're going to use this example in a moment. So I just thought it would be quite nice just to show you that little additional function as well. So hopefully you found that quite interesting. So now we have our payment there. So 437 is what I'm going to be paying each month. This is where we can get into utilizing some of those what if analysis features. Let's say now I've worked this out, I think to myself, well, I actually had budgeted for myself £500 a month. So I'm willing to pay £500 a month towards this loan. What that means is because I can pay 500, it means that the amount that I can borrow can either be more, or I could decrease the period of time that I'm borrowing that money over, okay? And you really need to decide kind of which one is your preference. So for me at the moment, I want to be able to borrow more money and maybe get a slightly nicer car, okay? So in order to work out how much I'm going to be able to borrow based off of an amount here of 500, I could start to kind of mess around with this. I could double click in here and say, okay, well, maybe let's try 25,000. I could carry on going through trying to get it right. So I could keep increasing this. You know, that's quite slow, quite tedious, particularly if you've got a lot of data and data that's more complex than what I'm using here. This is where you can use your first what if analysis tool, and that is the goal seek tool. It makes everything so much easier. So I'm going to make sure I'm clicked on that payment cell, so B6, and you'll find your what if analysis tools on the data ribbon at the top. And if you cast your eyes across to the right hand side, we're going for this forecast group over here, and you should see an option for what if analysis. Okay, and I'm going to click the drop down, and in there we have the three things that we're going to look at today: scenario manager, goal seek, and data table. In this case, we're interested in goal seek, and you can see as I hover over, I get that little screen tip that says find the right input value, find the right input for the value you want. So sounds good. I'm going to click on it, and I get this little dialog box just here. So it's saying to me, set cell, and then underneath to value. So I'm saying set cell B6, which is where I'm clicked, to value, and I want it 500. That's my budget. And I'm going to say set it to value 500 and adjust the loan amount and click OK. And what it will do is it'll go away and it'll recalculate everything so that if I'm paying £500 a month, the actual amount I can borrow is £27,485. All right, so a nice little utility there. I could have done it by adjusting the term. So if I wanted to take down the terms, I could do that as well. So if I just undo and take it back, let's do it again, but by adjusting that term instead. So exactly the same way, we're going to go to what if analysis, goal seek. We're going to set cell B6 to 500, but this time we're going to say do that by changing the term. And I'm going to say OK. So now, instead of paying over 60 months, I can pay over 56 months. All right, hopefully that makes sense to you. So as I said, start thinking in your mind situations that it might be useful to use that functionality. Let's do it again, slightly different scenario here. So I'm going to scroll down to the next example. And this is an example of some test scores. So we're going to pretend that I've been sitting a series of exams or tests, and these are my scores from each of those tests that I've sat. And I still need to do the final exam or the final test. And I know that I need to get a score of 80 in order to receive a grade A. Okay, sorry, an average score of 80 to receive a grade A. So the first thing I'm going to do is work out the average of all of my scores so far. So in this cell down here, which is highlighted in green, I'm going to do another very simple function. So equals average, and I'm sure you've used this before. Help if I could spell, there we go, open bracket. And I'm just going to highlight that whole column, including that blank just there, and close my bracket. And this is going to give me an average so far of 79, and you'll see that I've got that little marker pop up in the corner, and that's just letting me know that my formula refers to an empty cell, which I know it does just here, and that's okay in this instance because we're going to fill something in a moment. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to go back to my goal seek utility. So I'm going to go up to what if analysis. I'm going to go down to goal seek. And I'm going to say set cell B17, which is already highlighted, and the average needs to be 80 for me to get a grade A. So I'm going to say 80. And I'm going to say by changing cell, and then I'm going to select my blank cell just there and click on OK. And it takes Excel a couple of seconds to do this. And you can see there that I need to get a score of 89 in order to pass with a grade A, essentially with an average of 80. Okay, so a couple of different examples there of how you can use that goal seek utility. Let's do one more, because I believe that, you know, the more examples you see, the easier it's going to be for you guys to identify when you can use this tool. So let's jump across to another worksheet, and I'll scroll in a little bit so you can see that. All right, so this is something slightly different. So in this table, we have a list of employees. So we have the employee name in column A. We have the department that that employee works in, their work status, if they're full-time, contract, so on and so forth, the date they were hired, the number of years they've been there, their salary, their job rating, and their new salary. Now, what is this new salary? Well, they've all got pay rises of 2.7%, which you can see in cell J1. So this is their new salary once that has been calculated. And if we double click so you can look at that formula, what we've got in there is just a formula that's doing a round, so it's just rounding that number. But this is the part that you're interested in. So where it says F2, which is the salary, multiplied by, and then it's got J1, so it's actually underneath where I'm clicked, so you can't quite see it at the moment, but J1 is where we have that percentage increase, and J1 has been made absolute because of those dollar signs, which means when we copy it down, it's going to be fixed in that cell. And then we've done a plus F2. Now you might be thinking, why on earth have we done that? Well, when you do F2, so the salary times by the percentage, that's just going to give you the amount that the salary will increase by. What we want is the actual total, so the increase including the salary. So we have to kind of add the salary on again by selecting plus F2. That's just a quick explanation of what that function is actually doing. So that's everybody's salaries increased by 2.7%. If I jump down to the bottom, so I'm going to do Control down arrow, which will take me to the very last cell in my data. You can see there I have the total, which is currently at 38,889,526. That's the total of all of those new salaries. Now let's just jump back up to the top for one moment, so Control up arrow, and I have a little note on this spreadsheet that says that my budget for the staff salaries is actually 39 million. So currently I'm a little bit under budget. So I can give people a bigger increase. So I want to change the percentage rates. And this is where I can use goal seek again. Okay, so I'm going to Control down arrow to jump down to here and select this cell. Oops, there we go. I'm going to go back to what if analysis, and I'm going to select goal seek. And it says set cell H743, which is the one I currently have highlighted, to value, and the value I want to set it to is my budget, so 39 million. I never remember how many zeros to do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think that's right. To 39 million. And I want to do that by changing that interest rate at the top. So I'm just going to scroll all the way back up, and I'm going to click on cell J1. And I'm going to click on OK. And when I click on OK, what you should see is that these new salaries will update. So we click on OK and OK. So I can see now that for my budget, I can give all the staff a 3% increase, and it automatically did that because this formula refers to this cell. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to stop for 1 second. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes, lovely. Thank you, Rich. Wonderful. Great. All still with me? I'm very impressed for a Friday. Fabulous. All right. So that is pretty much how goal seek works. It's a very simple utility. We don't need to go too crazy into the examples because that's pretty much what it does. Let's move on to something slightly different. We're going to jump across to the scenarios worksheet. And again, if you remember, if we click in the what if analysis drop down, we have an option in here for scenario manager. So let's just review what that tooltip says. So it says, with scenario manager, we can create different groups of values or scenarios and switch between them. Now, again, sometimes these definitions don't make sense until you actually see it in action. So I always like to try and explain things in the simplest way possible. So I have a very basic spreadsheet just here, which might be my household budget, for example. So I've got my monthly income at the top here, and then I have my expenses listed in column B. I have a total for my expenses. So in there, I just have a formula going on, which is doing a sum of all of my expenses. And then I have the amount left. And again, if we double click, we have a calculation going on in there, which, as you would expect, is my monthly income in cell B1 minus my total expenses to give me the amount of money I have at the end to have fun with, shall we say. Now, this is, we're going to call this a scenario. So this is my sort of original scenario. And what I can do is I can set up different scenarios so I can view how my figures look. For example, if I get a promotion, that means that my monthly income is going to increase. And that means that the amount left over at the end of every month is going to be different. So that might be one scenario, a promotion. But what if I take that new job that someone keeps offering me? Maybe that's an even higher salary, but some of my expenses are going to increase. How much is going to be left at the end in that scenario? And you could have as many different scenarios as you wanted. I'm going to stick to 3 so we don't get too complicated and crazy. But it's good to be able to set up scenarios and then be able to switch easily between them to help you judge which is going to be the best outcome for you. So I might want to know if it's better for me to stay and take my promotion at my current job, or if it would be better for me to go and take the new job. Okay, that's kind of what scenarios do. So I'm going to kind of show you how you can set up all of those. So the first thing you want to do when you're using scenarios is you need to tell Excel all of the cells which might possibly change. So I know that my monthly income might change depending on if I go for a promotion or new job. And also some of my expenses might change as well. These totals aren't going to change because they will change automatically if any of these get updated. So I'm going to select, by holding down the control key, these other cells as well. So I'm just going to go through and select all of those as my changing cells. I'm going to go to what if analysis, and I'm going to go to my scenario manager. And this is where you can start to add in your different scenarios. Now, I would always recommend, before you start creating all kinds of different scenarios, always do one at the beginning that is your original scenario. So you can always go back to how it was at the beginning, okay? So I'm going to say add, and I'm going to give my first scenario a name of original, and you can call these whatever you like. And I'm going to click on OK. Now, this is a really good point to note. Now it's asking me enter the values for each of the changing cells. And you can see here, although it's quite hard to tell because we've only got these sort of these cell references listed. In here, it's showing me the information that I've highlighted over here. So 3,000 is the monthly income, 1,200 is the rent, so on and so forth. But this isn't very meaningful currently. I would much prefer it to say next to 3,000 monthly income. rent, travel, utilities, just to make this a little bit easier for me to understand and make it a bit more meaningful. So before we get into this, I'm actually going to go back and show you how you can name cells so that that happens and make your life a little bit easier. So we'll come back to this in a moment. Let's cancel. And again, this is basically naming cells, naming ranges, which you may or may not have done previously. I'm going to show you a couple of ways that you can do it to make it really quick and easy. So what I'm going to do is I am going to highlight my monthly income at the top here, and I'm going to give it the name monthly income by typing into the name box in the top corner. If you can see where it currently says B1, this is where you can name cells or ranges of cells. So I'm going to click in here and I'm going to call it monthly, underscore income. Now, when you're doing named ranges, you can't have any spaces in the name, so it has to be separated with an underscore, or it has to be all one word. So I'm going to hit enter. And I could go through and do the same for all of these, okay? Now, a quick way of doing it is to highlight them all, like so, go across to the formulas ribbon, and this is where you have your little name group. So I'm going to say create from selection. And it's asking me, what do you want to create the names for these from? So I want them all to be called what I've got listed in the left column. So I've got left column selected, and I'm going to click OK. So how can I confirm that those have been created? Well, I can click in the name box, and I should be able to see all of the names now. And you'll see when we go back into what if analysis, it's going to make it just a lot easier to see what you're doing. This step isn't mandatory. You could carry on just having the cell references, but I think this is a nice way to do it. So let's backtrack and do what we did before. We're going to highlight all of the cells that might possibly change. So again, I'm just going to go through and I'm going to select all of these cells like so. I'm going to go to data. I'm going to go to what if analysis and scenario manager. And we're just kind of backtracking what we did. So I'm going to click add. And remember, the first one we're setting up is the original scenario where nothing has changed, just so we can go back to this if we need to. And click on OK. And now you can see that these are a lot easier to read. Where is my monthly one? Oh, sorry, I know what I did wrong. Sorry, bear with me. Let me just cancel out of there. I think I named my monthly one slightly wrong. Let me just backtrack and delete the monthly one. There we go. And let me do that again. So I'm just doing the same thing that we did before. Okay, let's try that one more time. Back to data, what if analysis, scenario manager, add original. Okay, it doesn't seem to like that, does it? It's a little bit odd. Why is that happening? Sorry, just bear with me. I don't know why that's not popping up the monthly income. Yeah, it's listed in there. Have I not selected it again? Third time lucky. What do you reckon, guys? There we go. That's better. I think it's just me and my terribly poor clicking with my mouse pad. There we go. So monthly income, rent, travel. So if you remember from before, these were showing as cell references, and it was really hard to tell which one was which. Now it's quite easy to tell what they are. So I'm going to leave all of these values. This is the original scenario, which we want to go back to after we've made changes. So I'm just going to click on OK, and it will add that original scenario into my scenarios list. What I'm going to do now is add another scenario, which my figures are going to change slightly depending on if I get a promotion or not. So I'm going to select add, and this one is going to be called promotion, and click on OK. Now, if I get a promotion, that's going to mean that my monthly income is going to increase. So I'm going to change this to 3,500. And if I've got a promotion, I've got more money coming in each month, well, that means I'm going to be going out more. So I'm going to be spending more on going out. So we're going to take that up to 400, a few more drinks for me every single month. And I think that's about it. Everything else is going to pretty much stay the same. And I'm going to click on OK. And you can see it's added that scenario into my list as well. I'm going to add one more. And this is the scenario for if I was to take that new job that I keep being contacted about. What would that scenario look like? So I'm going to select add. And we're going to say this one's called new job. Click on OK. Now, if I get this new job, I'm going to be bringing home 4,500 a month. But you know what? This new job is a little bit further away, which means my travel costs are going to increase. So that's going to be 200 a month. But I'm still going to start going out a lot more. So I'm going to change that to 400. And you can really sort of set these up however you want, depending on your conditions. And I'm going to click on OK. So now I have my 3 different scenarios in here, and I can switch very easily between them to see which one is going to be best for me, which one is going to give me the most amount of disposable income at the end of the month. And we can do that just by switching easily between them. So if I want to see the promotion, I can select it and click show at the bottom, and you'll see the total there. I'm going to have 1,030 left over at the end of the month, which is way better. If we go back to original and show, way better, double than 580. But what if I was to take that new job? Is the new job going to work out better for me than the promotion? Well, let's look. New job, show. Yes, a lot better. So I know that out of those 3 different scenarios, taking the new job would be the best option for me. Okay, and you can add as many different scenarios as you like. You can go crazy. There's loads of room. You can just keep adding them in. And it's a nice way of not having to create different spreadsheets for each scenario. You can just set them up, switch between them, and see them very easily. Another little thing that I love about this is once you do have your different scenarios, you can create a very quick summary report. So if you want to see them all side by side, if you click the summary button at the bottom here, and just say scenario summary, it will open up a new tab called scenario summary, and you can see there that you have the original, the promotion, and the new job as well, and you can see those figures. And again, you can see here the results cell. I didn't name the results cell, so that's why it's showing as the cell reference, so B13. I could, if I wanted to, go back and I could name this cell. So I could highlight it and give it a name of amount left, like so. And then if I was to run, if I delete or close out of that and run the scenario report again, you'll see that that should update. So if I go back to what if analysis, scenario manager, and select summary, it's not my day today, is it? Let me delete that out again. I'm really having problems with these named ranges today. It's very odd. Amount left. Yeah, you should update, you silly thing. I think it's going to update. It should do. As always, when I ran through this earlier today, it updated fine. I don't know why it's not doing it today, but hopefully when you do it, you'll find that it will update if you've named them correctly at the beginning. But hopefully that gives you an example of how you can list them side by side as well. Okay, so it's just a nice way of seeing them all and figuring out what your best scenario is going to be. Now I'm just going to right click and delete that summary sheet. Another little tip or thing that I like to do is I like to add it to my quick access toolbar. So I'm actually going to remove that from there. I like to add it to my quick access toolbar. So if I want to quickly switch between my different scenarios, I don't have to keep going into what if analysis scenario manager. I can just click on a button on my toolbar and select which scenario I want. So again, if you can customize the quick access toolbar by clicking the end option or the little drop down, and go to more commands. And this is where you can add commands to your quick access toolbar. I don't know if you utilize the quick access toolbar as much, but I use it quite a lot. I like to add commands that I use frequently to this quick access toolbar. And commands are sorted into different kind of groups. So at the moment we have popular commands showing. I'm actually going to switch to all commands so I know that I have everything. And I'm going to look for the scenario manager. Now in here, these are all in alphabetical order, so it's a bit easier to find by scrolling down. I always wish there was a little search to make this a bit easier, but I can see there, scenario manager. And I'm going to click add, just to add that to my quick access toolbar, and click on OK. And you can see it's put this little icon just there. So when I click it, I can then select whichever one I want. And that's a little bit quicker than having to go into that what if analysis scenario manager each time. So think about possibly adding it to your quick access toolbar. Lovely. All right. Final couple of examples. As I said, this topic isn't very, very long, but quite important. The last one in this what if scenario is data tables. And data tables basically use a central formula to complete values, okay? And again, this is probably not going to make much sense until we get into this example. So to keep things consistent, what I'm trying to do is utilize functions that we've used previously. So again, we're going back to that PMT function. So we have at the top here a little table that has a loan amount. So the loan amount is 10,000. The interest rate yearly is 2%. The term in years is 30 years. And the monthly payment is what I need to work out. Okay, so I'm going to quickly do that PMT function again. So this is a good point for you to kind of recap on that PMT function that we used earlier. I'm going to do it a slightly different way this time. So before, remember, we typed it straight into the cell. This time, just to show you a different way of doing it, I'm going to use the functions dialog box. So I'm going to click on the little FX button just here. And if you remember, this is where we came into before, where we searched for our function, where I typed in loan payment and it found the PMT function. You could do that. Because I've used it recently, you can see it's there listed at the top. So I'm going to double click to select it. And with this functions dialog box, it's basically exactly the same as typing it into the cell, but it kind of gives you some nice boxes. And some people find this a little bit easier, particularly if they're first sort of learning how to use functions. People find this a little bit easier because it sort of gives you a bit of a guide, but it is exactly the same as just inputting it directly into the cell. So what are we going to do here? So PMT, we are looking for the rate first of all, okay? So that is our 2%, so cell B3. And remember, we want to do this per month. This is a monthly payment, so we need to divide by 12. And you can see there next to it, it gives you the answer. So per month, the interest is 0.0016666, okay? Next one is the number of payments, and that is the term, or number of periods I should say, sorry. So that is the term. Now, if you remember previously, I had it in months, so 60 months instead of 5 years. Now this actually is correct. This isn't 30 months, this is 30 years. So I have to do something a bit different here. So I'm going to select the term. But because this is in years, I actually want to break it down by months because everything we're doing in here needs to be in months, okay? So in this case, I'm going to multiply it by 12 to get the number of months. So if I do multiplied by 12, again, you'll see here it says 360. So there are 360 months. And I'm then going to do, or it's then asking me for present value. So again, that is the loan amount, which is cell B2, fairly straightforward. And remember, if we don't want it to come up with a minus figure, because that PMT will always, Excel will interpret that as a payment coming out of your account, you can put a minus figure in front of the present value like so. And click on OK. And that tells me how much my monthly payment is, £36.96. Now that's fine. So I can see here that an interest rate of 2%, that's how much I'm going to be paying on a £10,000 loan over this number of years, months, whatever I have in there. Now, what if I could want to construct a little table? So maybe I want to see this information, so how much the loan would be with an interest payment of 1.5% or 2% or 2.75%. This is where you could utilize data tables. And there are two different types of data table that you can utilize. There's what we call a one variable data table or a two variable data table. And we're going to do both. The first one is the one variable data table. And what we mean by that is we're just using one set of information. So we're just using the interest rate in here. So one variable. Now, this is probably going to seem a little bit weird, first of all. What you need to do is you have to have your rates listed in consecutive order, so they can't be all mixed up. They need to be sorted nicely like I have here. And you need to put the calculation you're going to be using to work that out in the cell sort of directly above and to the right of it, so that if you were to highlight all of it, you'd make a rectangle. Okay, so this is the cell I want to target. And what payment am I going to be using, or what function, formula I should say, am I going to be using? It's going to be this PMT. So I'm just going to link very quickly to that cell by doing equals B5. Okay, so that links to my PMT formula. Now what I can do using data tables, and this is such a cool little nifty trick, if I just highlight my data like that, go to what if analysis and down to data table, I either need to input a row input cell or a column input cell, or both. Now, because we're doing a one dimension data table, I'm only using one set of data. And the data that I'm using is in a column, okay? So I'm going to be using the column input cell. And what data do I have in this column? What data am I using for this data table? I'm using that interest rate, okay? So the column input cell needs to be the interest rate that's coming out of that PMT function. Remember, all of this links to this formula, which links down here, okay? So we need to select the interest rate and click on OK. And that will very quickly work out all of those monthly payments for these different points of data. Okay, so you can just quickly do a double check to make sure that's working correctly. So up here I've got 2%, and that would be a £36.96 payment. So if I just check in my table, 2% is £36.96. If I change my interest rate to 3% in the table at the top, I should have 42.16, and if I check my data table, I can see that's correct, 42.16. All right, so that is how you can utilize a data table to quickly input all of the different values for all of those different possibilities. Now, that is a one-dimensional data table, and it's definitely worth having a little practice around. I know it's a little bit tricky with some of these parts, you know, what am I linking to? Where do I put it? Just have to remember that you just need to be able to highlight it in a rectangle in order to do the data table, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. Let's jump across to our final example, which is really the same thing, but we've got 2 dimensions instead of just 1. So this should look fairly familiar. We do have slightly different data. So this is this looks like it's more to do with a house. We've got a much bigger value here. So the loan amount this time is 300,000. The interest rate is 3%. The term is 30 years again, and we need to work out the monthly payments. And then we're going to use that calculation to complete our data table. So I can look at all different scenarios for this particular loan. So let's kind of consolidate everything that we've done. We're going to go back to doing our PMT calculation. Equals PMT, open bracket. Our rate is cell B3, and remember, divide by 12 because we're working out a monthly payment. Comma. Number of payments. I always say number of payments, number of periods, I mean. So number of periods. So that is the term. Again, I've got 30 years in here, so I don't have it broken down into months. So I'm going to do cell B4, and I'm going to multiply that by 12 to get the number of months. Comma, and then my present value, which is my loan amount. And again, if I don't want it to display as a negative, I need to put a minus in front of my loan amount. And then I'm just going to close off my bracket like so. And there we go. So my monthly payment is £1,264.81. So now I'm going to take that calculation that we've done and we're going to utilize it and create a data table down here. So I've got a nice little space just here because remember I need to be able to create a rectangle in order to do a data table. So I'm going to put or link to my function that all this information is going to draw off in here. So equals and then select the cell with your PMT formula, like so. And now I'm going to highlight everything, go to what if analysis, down to data table. Now, if you remember last time we did it, we had a one-dimensional table, so we only needed the column input cell. So this time we have 2 dimensions, so I need to input the 2 row input cell and column input cell as well. So my row input cell, what do I have in my row? Well, I have the interest rate running across in my row. So I need to select the interest rate from my table, like so. What's my column input cell? Well, what do I have in my column? This is where I have the loan amount. So I select loan amount from my table and click on OK. And there we go. Very quickly, we have all the different scenarios that you can have for the different interest rates and also the different loan amounts. And again, you can just do a quick visual check. So if we have a look at the loan amount for 300,000, which we have in the table, so 300,000 is the bottom row just here. And if we go across the table to 3%, 1264812, and that's exactly what we have up here in cell B5. Okay, so that's how you can do it. And then you can go through and you can start changing these figures and everything will update in your data table. The final little trick that I like to do, just to make this a little bit more readable, because sometimes if you're looking at this, it's a bit hard to kind of figure out what's going on. I quite like to apply a little bit of conditional formatting. Again, you don't have to do it, but I like to highlight all of my numbers, go to the home ribbon, and under conditional formatting, go to color scales, and you can select any one of these, and it just kind of gives you a color scale. So the with the color scale that I've selected, if you hover over it, it will say, for example, apply a color gradient to a range of cells. The color indicates where each cell value falls within that range. Okay, so that just makes it a little bit easier to read. Hopefully that all makes sense. And that's pretty much all I wanted to cover with you today. We've gone through hopefully a few things that you're going to find useful. For just a very quick recap, we looked at that PMT function numerous times, not part of what if analysis, but as you can see, we've used it in quite a lot of examples. So good to have that in your toolkit as well. We've looked at how you can utilize the goal seek utilities. Remember these examples. So how you can adjust your loan amount and your term by putting in a target value just here. We've looked at creating different scenarios which you might find useful, and we've also looked at 2 different types of data table, a 1-dimensional data table and a 2-dimensional data table, and we've applied some nice conditional formatting to that. As I said, I encourage you to try this on your own data. Don't be afraid of it, have a play around with it. I will send you the recording of this session, and you can and also these spreadsheets that I'm using, so that you can have a little play around with that in your own time, and it's really using it will help you understand it. Just to remind you, the recording, because we always every week get so many emails about the recording, so I just want to reiterate this. The recording gets done automatically as I'm doing the session. The recording then takes 24 hours for it to kind of upload to our system. So after 24 hours, you will get sent a link in an email from us that will link you through to the recording and all the practice files. So I often get emails 2 hours after the webinar's finished asking me where the recording is. It comes 24 hours later, okay? Another thing I would ask you to do is also, if you think you haven't got it this time tomorrow, please do check your spam, your junk and your clutter folders. If you've ever moved emails from us before into clutter, into spam, then sometimes your email system might automatically direct all of our emails to that folder. So be aware of that, okay? If you still don't have it, then please feel free to drop me an email, and I'll just pop my email address up on here, and I can send you a link to your email address. So that's my email address. Quite long, I'm sorry. But yes, please only email me if you've kind of checked all those other things, and remember, you need to wait 24 hours for that to come through. I'll just leave that up there as I finish off with some questions. So I know there's sort of been a lot of chatter going on as I've been going through. I can't look at the chat panel and the screen at the same time, unfortunately. I am doing this on my own these days. So if anybody has any questions, you want to pop them into the box and I'll try and answer a few. Let's have a look. Again, I have to scroll up a little bit. There's lots of people saying thank you. Oh, thanks everyone. Some very nice comments. That's always nice to hear. Linda, I hope you get that promotion. I do too. Unfortunately, it's just an imaginary one, Linda. So far, we just have a lot of people saying thank you. Someone else, Ken, has put, I used to do this by individual calculations. Glad Microsoft finally made it part of the program. I know, it's so useful. You don't have to do the individual calculations anymore. It's just quite quick and easy. Nick has asked, what does PMT stand for? It's actually the short form of payment. That's what PMT stands for. Let's have a look. Scroll up. I can't actually see any questions, just lots of nice comments. Let me scroll back down again. Monica's put, would you need to use the refresh scenario window? You know, I might do. I might have had to, Monica. I don't know. I think I did it in slightly the wrong order. So it's just my naming conventions. It's not anything too drastic. Let's have a look. Joe's put, fantastic insight. We are always running into what if situations. Great, Joe. Then hopefully that will be useful for you. Some things that you can employ there and impress the hell out of your colleagues. Leslie's put, what versions of Excel do we find the what if in? That is a great question. So you will find what if, and you can correct me when I'm wrong, definitely in the latest version of Excel, which is now Excel 2019. You will find it in 2016, you'll find it in 2013, and I'm pretty sure you get it in 2010 and 2007. So I'm not sure about versions earlier than 2007, but yes. Let's have a look. When saving the worksheet, does the scenario manager options also save? Yes, they do, Linda. Great question. Yes. If you create a load of different scenarios, when you save the worksheet, those scenarios will save. So that would be a bit of a pain if you had to create them every time you opened your worksheet. Absolutely. Let me have a little bit look. If you add X control to your spreadsheet, then you can build a 3-dimensional data table. Do you mean active X controls, Vivian? I'm not sure if you mean X control or active X control. You know what? I've never actually done a 3-dimensional table. So if you've done one that way, that would be amazing. I'd love to know. Send it to me. David's put, what other functions are commonly used besides PMT? Oh my God, David, so many. And it really sort of depends on what kind of job you do as to which ones you utilize most often. But the ones that I find are really common amongst people, functions like lookup functions are always very popular. So things like VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, index match. People use if statements quite a lot as well. So if else, all of those kinds of things. And of course, the basic ones of sum, average, count, min, max. Those are kind of like your 5 basics, yes. So those would be sort of some of the most commonly used ones. But there are over 400 functions in Excel. I'm pretty sure you won't use 99% of them. Leslie's put, can you have different setups in each workbook? Yes, you can. Let's have a look. Tim's put, when you were doing the last data 2, you copied the answer to directly above, but on the data 1 you said you had to be to the right. Can you clarify? It's really all about I know that's a bit confusing, Tim. It's really all about kind of being able to highlight a rectangle, which sounds really basic and simple, you know, like, oh, a shape. I'm making a shape. But that's pretty much what it is. Let's go back. So if we go to the data table, you know, I put the function in here because, I mean, I could have, could I put it in there? Yeah, I could have put it in there as well. No, I couldn't actually. Sorry, it has to be in there because it's gonna, the figures are gonna follow down. So I put it above and I'm kind of creating a rectangle just there. Let me just see, because I don't want to lie to you. Let me cut and paste that there just to see if it works. No, it's not gonna let me. Let me delete it and link to that cell instead. Let's just see if it works. We've got it there. I don't think, no, it doesn't. So it has to be above for the one dimension. You need to put it above where your results are going to be below, like so. Data table 2. Yeah, it needs to go there, because if you put it anywhere else on this table, you wouldn't be able to make a rectangle. Again, if you were to put it, let's try it somewhere else. Let me link to this cell over here. And let me create my data cell. This is just an experiment to see if this actually works. Let's try. Because you never know. Row input cell, what have we got? Percentage. Column input is the loan amount. No, it doesn't work. So it needs to be sort of within your data, not sort of somewhere crazy on the worksheet, within your data. Again, that's something you might have a little bit of a play around with, but you need to kind of be making an area so that you can kind of highlight it as a rectangle. That's the best answer I can give you on that one, I'm afraid. Let me quickly jump back to the chat panel. Just bear with me, guys. Wow, I've got some really, really long ones here. Jonathan's put, please show next time rounding off, up, down, 100 items. Okay, so rounding would be a good subject to cover in one of our functions webinars. We can include that one in there. I'll have to check the schedule, or you can always check the schedule as well to see when the next webinar on functions is. But yeah, rounding is always a good one to cover. Let me have a look. Okay, some of these are a little bit off topic. Now, if your questions are off topic, or you have a question about something else, or it's quite hard for me to see because I keep scrolling up and down trying to find older answers that I've missed. As I said, anything that I haven't answered, if you want to send it through to me, and I'll be able to help you via email, that might be the best answer. So I'll just leave that up there again for you. Lovely, guys. Okay, I'm going to leave it there because I am aware that it is Friday, and if you're in the UK, it's time to go to the pub, I think. And for those of you who are in different time zones, maybe it's the middle of the day, I hope you enjoy your Friday. We are back next Wednesday. So my colleague Tess is running a webinar. I can't actually remember what it is. I think it might be a word. But if you want to check our schedule then and join that, then please feel free. If not, I'm back in 2 weeks' time for another Excel webinar. So again, please check our schedule and book onto that if you want. Look out for the video file in 24 hours' time. And if not, I will speak to you very, very soon. Thank you so much for attending, everyone. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.